Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. How could a cemetery be developed? Vladimir Putin says Africa is a cemetery for Africans. When an African becomes rich, his bank accounts are in Switzerland. He travels to France for medical treatment. He invests in Germany. He buys from Dubai. He consumes Chinese. He prays in Rome or Mecca. His children study in Europe. He travels to Canada, USA, and Europe for tourism. If he dies, he will be buried in his native country. Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. How could a cemetery be developed?
Well, some have argued that Putin did not make that statement, while others have said that Putin himself is a white racist and should not be taken seriously. Yet others have disputed the entire statement. Even if Putin did not make that statement, as some have claimed, it appears to be relevant as we are all looking for answers to how our African people can share this yoke of underachievement, poverty, and the African wants in a globalized world. Of course, Putin's a Russian, and the Russians themselves have their own problems. Apart from the enormous military assets, it is not achieving at a level of commensurate with its potentials either. However, the statement itself, whoever made it, is a food for thought. Everywhere is a cemetery for its long-term residents, aside from those places where the ground is so hard that the dead bodies have to be cremated. Now back to the main question. Is Africa a cemetery? Is it true that rich Africans spend their money in Europe, Dubai, and US? Is it true that we usually live in these places and only ask our survivors to carry our dead bodies home for burial? Is it true that those who steal our money deposit same in Swiss bank accounts? Is it true that those who make their money in a clean way prefer to invest in the developed countries and they rarely think of developing their homelands? Well, the answers to these questions may provide some clues. Well, there is absolutely nothing wrong with anyone looking for better places to spend the rest of their lives. If a person is tired of Nigeria and prefers to move to Poland or Chile, why should anyone bother? After all, these countries in America were only populated by the present inhabitants in the past 300 to 400 years. Prior to that time, they mostly lived in Europe. Why should the Africans be treated differently? And again, why do these people want to get buried in Africa? Why don't they say bye-bye to Africa and know they are now polished Argentines or Americans? The African primary schools are of low quality. Send your children to British schools in Lekki. The secondary schools here suck. Let them continue in American schools until they are old enough. African universities are no good. Send them to Britain. Now they have degrees, so look for the UN or European or the American jobs and they will start earning dollars. We continue on this track until it's time to bite the dust. Most people don't know or pay attention to the fact that black people are not unified by love, only necessity. If Africa doesn't grow up in its own image, it will forever be failing. I like to think there are only 3 races according to science, which is Asia, white, and black. Very unique races. I believe the Asians and whites can leave blacks behind if they don't preserve themselves and further their own culture and practice it, not practice the European culture. As Africans, let us make up our minds. Check out like a good Mary and forget it if you want. However, if you still have it in you that this is home, we don't need any European president to tell us that we need to think of ways of remaining relevant at home. Even if we have tried and failed, please let us try again. Now, what do you think about Putin's claim that Africa is just a cemetery for Africans? Here is the whole statement. When an African becomes rich, his bank accounts are in Switzerland, he travels to France for medical treatment, he invests in Germany, he buys from Dubai, he consumes Chinese, he prays in Rome or Mecca, his children study in Europe, he travels to Canada, US, Europe for tourism. If he dies, he will be buried in the native country of Africa. Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. How could a cemetery be developed? So let me know what you think about this video in the comment section. Is it true that Africa is only a cemetery for Africans? Your time is indeed appreciated.